Have you ever noticed how the atmosphere in a room changes when you enter? Smiles become less genuine, laughter subsides, and conversations suddenly cease. It's not about your behavior or manners. The reason lies in something elusive, an inner strength that others feel but cannot explain. You tend to ask deep, thought-provoking questions, listen attentively to the answers, and speak with conviction. Your gaze penetrates the soul, causing others to look away. You may have been told that you are too serious, delve too deeply into details, and analyze everything around you. But what if this isn't a flaw, but a sign of something greater? According to Carl Jung, your presence may be filled with powerful energy, a kind of psychological aura that challenges those around you without words. It's not about fear of you personally, but that you reflect their own complexes, fears, and carefully hidden masks. That's why people try to distance themselves, avoid communication, and resort to gossip. They unconsciously belittle themselves to feel safe around you. Your energy, permeated with honesty, disarms those who are accustomed to hiding behind pretense. Carl Jung, a prominent researcher of the human psyche, dedicated his life to deeply studying the psychic energy emanating from those who dared to face their shadow and find their authentic self. This energy, often unconscious, can have a powerful impact on others. This isn't due to weakness or brokenness, but on the contrary, to the uniqueness and rarity of such a personality. In a world where comfort and predictability are valued above all else, extraordinary energy evokes fear and rejection in people. The idea of an aura as a spiritual phenomenon, a luminous field of color surrounding the body, is widespread. However, Carl Jung held a much deeper and psychologically grounded view. In his opinion, an aura is not just light but a powerful energy field that cannot be measured by physical instruments, but can be felt on an intuitive level. Jung believed that every person radiates this subtle but strong field of psychic energy, shaped by their thoughts, emotions, and above all, the unconscious. This energy speaks long before a person utters words. It manifests in the way they enter a room, in the involuntary reactions of others, in the atmosphere they create around themselves, even in silence. Jung called this influence the unconscious transmission of the self, and it comes from the very depths of the personality that most people prefer to ignore or suppress. From the shadow, pain, and truth. Immersion into the innermost corners of one's soul inevitably leads to a transformation of the energetic structure of the personality. A person begins to radiate a different presence, formed not under the influence of social conventions or the desire for approval, but through self-knowledge, the depth of the inner world, and harmony with oneself. Others feel this change, even without being able to explain it rationally. They feel that they are facing a different personality. This manifests in the expressiveness of the gaze, in the peaceful silence, in the calm intensity emanating from the person. Carl Jung believed that such an aura is capable of subconsciously influencing other people. And the point here isn't in any actions, but in the fact that the person's energy exposes what others have been trying to hide all their lives, their complexes, fears, and false ideas about themselves. That's why people may distance themselves, make erroneous judgments, or experience a sense of discomfort. Even if a person speaks quietly and shows goodwill, their aura, the energy of their true self, comes into direct contact with their unconscious. And not everyone is ready for such a dialogue. Realizing this idea is the cornerstone of Jung's teachings, which emphasized that we are not just mind or body. We are fields of psychic influence, living symbols, and walking mirrors. And the more honest a person becomes with themselves, the more intense their aura becomes for others. The first warning sign: those around you notice a certain excessiveness, an increased concentration in you. Even when you simply express what you think, your words seem to be born from the very depths of your soul. This isn't a desire to impress or assert your superiority, but a sincere need to establish a spiritual connection. And yet, for some inexplicable reason, your speeches are often perceived as something excessive, beyond the usual. You voice what others prefer to keep silent about. You bring to light what people are carefully trying to hide. You bring a ray of truth into a world woven from illusions, and this causes discomfort for many. They say you are too serious, too verbose, or too deep in your judgments. But the real reason for their discontent lies elsewhere. You make me feel emotions I'm not ready for. As the eminent psychologist Carl Jung asserted, some people possess a unique ability to awaken the unconscious in those around them. They seem to push others to confront the harsh truth about themselves, about life, about their carefully constructed masks and roles. Therefore, when you speak, it's not merely a meaningless string of words. It's a potent flow of energy, a palpable presence, a depth that permeates your entire being. And for those accustomed to gliding on the surface of life, this is perceived as a direct threat to their fragile world. Your intensity isn't a manifestation of aggression or arrogance. It's above all emotional honesty, the courage to be open and sincere in your feelings. And sadly, few can withstand this onslaught without flinching or recoiling in fear. The second characteristic trait is that small talk has a noticeably draining effect. This manifests instantly as a reaction to the superficial energy inherent in trivial topics, discussing the weather, professional activities, or television programs. It's not a matter of being impolite, but rather an attempt to sustain the conversation by expressing agreement, smiling, and answering questions. However, on a deeper level, internal resistance arises. Carl Jung believed that people with a developed connection to their unconsciousness dislike hypocrisy. Small talk often serves as a barrier, preventing the establishment of genuine connection. During such communication, a person's aura transmits different signals, indicating the unnaturalness of what's happening and the desire to discuss meaningful issues. This kind of energy disrupts the accepted scenario and social illusions, which doesn't go unnoticed by those around, even in the absence of words. A person may be perceived as aloof, cold, or unsociable. In reality, the soul craves sincerity, and the aura makes this desire evident. The third sign is the ability to attract confessions and emotional outpourings. Strangers share stories of their lives, and friends turn to them for support in difficult moments. A person is often called a psychotherapist, even though they've never engaged in such activity. This isn't accidental. Jung believed that some people carry within them an unconscious archetype of a healer, even without working in the healthcare field. Such a person's aura radiates depth, composure, and emotional safety. People feel comfortable opening up to them, even with little acquaintance. However, there's a paradox. In return, a person rarely receives attention for themselves. They listen, create a safe space, and accept others' pain, but few are interested in their own condition. This generates a feeling of loneliness, surrounded by emotions and a longing for mutual understanding. An aura can attract those who are suffering, but at the same time repel those who fear their own inner darkness. Often, people seem to avoid direct eye contact with a person who possesses strong energy. When such an individual enters a room, it immediately becomes palpable. The behavior of those around changes. They cast fleeting glances and then quickly avert their eyes. Their voices become quieter, and they generally behave differently. These changes may be subtle, but they unmistakably indicate discomfort. In some cases, people try to avoid any interaction at all. In others, they look with curiosity, as if trying to solve a riddle, but remain silent. Carl Jung, the eminent Swiss psychologist, taught that when a person integrates into their personality those aspects that others deny, they inadvertently reflect their own suppressed traits. Such a person's gaze becomes not just a social gesture, but a kind of psychic encounter. Those around see in them not only themselves, but also a reflection of themselves. And if they aren't ready for such a revelation, they experience discomfort and retreat. They may even call them arrogant or intimidating, even if they show kindness. The presence of such a person requires others to be honest with themselves, not because they demand it, but because their aura speaks louder than any words. The presence of a person with powerful energy can evoke strong reactions in those around them, even if they don't take any action. They can simply sit silently, doing nothing unusual, but someone will definitely react. This person may take a defensive position, show irritation, or conversely, become unnaturally cold. At such moments, a legitimate question arises. What did I do? Carl Jung believed that a person's powerful and integral energy is capable of disrupting the subconscious balance of those around them, especially those who are hiding from themselves. The presence of such a person acts like a mirror, reflecting back to others the traits they don't want to acknowledge in themselves. Insecurity, shame, envy. They don't even have to say anything. Their energy speaks for itself. It's the quiet power of a developed aura. They don't need to draw attention to themselves because their very existence compels others to confront their true selves. And most people don't like what they see in that reflection. The sixth distinguishing trait is a rejection of ostentatious falseness, which is unmistakably sensed by those around them. Hypocrisy, forced smiles, superficiality, and an insatiable desire for posturing evoke instant repulsion. Intuition signals insincerity long before the mind has time to analyze the situation. This heightened sensitivity isn't a manifestation of judgment, but rather the result of developed perception. According to Jung, integrating the shadow, that is, accepting one's own dark and rejected aspects, leads to achieving psychological wholeness. This in turn endows a person with the ability to recognize fragmentation in others. Therefore, when someone nearby is hiding behind a mask and pretending to be someone they're not, their aura seems to send a nonverbal signal. Stop pretending, I see your true self. Most people aren't ready for such direct contact. They may experience discomfort, become overly defensive, or simply label the person as too intense and try to keep their distance. The reason lies not in the exposure, but in the fact that the presence of such a person doesn't allow the illusions of those around them to freely exist. The seventh sign manifests in the ability to make people doubt themselves. Such a person tends to ask questions that others prefer to avoid, question established stereotypes, and not accept generally accepted norms simply because they are such. In their presence, people begin to feel insecure, become confused, question their own words, and try to justify things they usually don't think about. This isn't arrogance or manipulation, but rather the result of mental weight, conditioned by clarity of thought. Jung argued that a person who has achieved deep self-awareness becomes a living contradiction to the collective unconscious. Their clarity exposes the confusion of others, tranquility reveals anxiety, and self-confidence highlights the insecurity of those around them. At the same time, there's no need to argue or prove anything. The simple presence of such a person can destabilize false self-assurance. In a world where the ego desperately needs confirmation, this makes them quiet but very dangerous. The eighth sign manifests in the fact that people reveal their innermost secrets to you, feeling that you understand them more deeply than anyone else, and then suddenly withdraw. For a brief moment, there's a feeling of genuine connection, but then they disappear, cease communication, and become alienated, leaving you wondering about the reasons for what happened. This emotional whiplash isn't your fault, but rather the result of the shadow's work. As Jung asserted, when a person feels truly seen and understood on a deep level, it awakens in them the aspects they have avoided for years. Your aura doesn't harm them, but rather exposes them, which can be painful for those who aren't ready to face their pain, traumas, or deeper truth. Therefore, they withdraw, not because of your actions, but because you inadvertently opened a door they're not ready to enter. You didn't destroy the connection, you made it too real. The ninth sign is that you, even without striving for it, cause discomfort in people, especially those in positions of power. When you enter a room, the dynamics of power change. Your boss becomes defensive and a loud and dominant person falls silent. People accustomed to controlling the situation begin to lose confidence. You don't do anything, but your energy says, I'm not easily controlled. Jung believed that people who have integrated their inner strength, their inner archetype of the king or queen, radiate calm dignity. It doesn't shout or pose, but simply exists. Such a presence threatens anyone who builds their personality on dominance or control. You may notice that people in power either deeply respect you or secretly resent you, because without saying a word, Your aura communicates, "You have no power over me." For those who rely on fear or status to maintain control, this is the most unsettling statement you could make. And here's the 10th sign that testifies to your uniqueness. You enter another person's life with an open heart, driven by sincerity and honesty, pursuing no selfish goals, but, against all odds, you turn into a negative character in their personal drama. You are accused of arrogance, insensitivity, excessive assertiveness, or conversely, inappropriate emotionality. Your desire for silence is interpreted as condemnation, your sense of self-worth as selfishness, and your need for solitude as a rejection of communication. But the real reason lies not in your actions, but in a psychological mechanism known as projection. This phenomenon, deeply studied by Carl Jung, is one of the most dangerous traps in interpersonal relationships. When an individual is not ready to recognize and accept their own shortcomings, they subconsciously transfer them to others. And people with a strong, developed, spiritually rich aura become the ideal screen for these projections because their very presence reflects what others are desperately trying to hide. You haven't turned into a villain. You've simply refused to play the role of a victim, which destroyed the carefully constructed narrative. The 11th sign is that even complete strangers feel an inexplicable attraction to you. This can happen in the most unexpected places, in a supermarket, in an airport waiting room. A stranger suddenly begins to share their innermost thoughts with you, confessing something deeply personal, exclaiming, "I don't know why I'm telling you this." In such situations, there is no ordinary small talk. Only exposed emotions remain, as if this person has been waiting a long time to meet someone like you. Carl Jung believed that some people possess what he called numinous energy. It is not just charisma or charm, it is a kind of soul gravity. People feel this energy. Although they don't always realize its nature, they feel safe, feel that they are seen and understood. They are drawn to something ancient and sacred. Your aura acts as a silent spiritual beacon. Even if you are not religious, even if you are not actively searching for anything, your soul radiates a light that others, especially those who are lost, suffering, or seeking their way, perceive as a silent call. One of the characteristic signs is an instant sense of the energy of the space. When such a person crosses the threshold of a room, it only takes them a few moments to accurately determine what is wrong here. They catch the prevailing tension, feel the hidden animosity, and instantly recognize the masks that those around them put on. It seems that they have developed some kind of sixth ability. However, in reality, this is the result of their highly sensitive mental constitution. The famous psychologist Carl Jung called this psychological intuition the ability of the unconscious mind to function beyond logic and verbal formulations. They don't need detailed explanations. They feel the truth and unerringly recognize the lie. They don't just observe energy flows, they absorb them. This quality is a double-edged sword, being both a gift and a curse of spiritual receptivity. On the one hand, it opens access to the deepest layers of human experience. On the other, it makes them vulnerable to energy overload. Their aura is like a sensitive antenna, constantly picking up signals that others don't even realize they are sending. And if they don't take due care, they risk taking on the burden of other people's emotions that never belong to them. The 13th distinguishing feature, a feeling of deep detachment from generally accepted reality, a feeling shared by those around them. There is an inexplicable spiritual isolation inside. This is not just the absence of other people nearby, but rather an awareness of a fundamental difference at the level of the soul itself. From an early age, one feels like a stranger, even in a circle of close friends or in one's own family. As if from birth, one looks at the world with eyes that have seen centuries, while others notice only the outer shell. The famous psychologist Carl Jung believed that there are people born with a special inner call, coming from the depths of their self. This call tirelessly draws them to personal growth, the achievement of integrity, and deep transformation. Often, such individuals prefer to remain on the sidelines of society, questioning generally accepted norms and foundations. They carry wisdom that seems to have come from another world. The aura of these people reflects their inner essence, radiating depth and mystery. It awakens something ancient and forgotten in those who meet them on their life path. For some, it inspires. For others, it scares, but few can remain indifferent. Whether they realize it or not, they are next to someone who does not quite belong to this world, but was sent into it with a special mission to change it. Observations reveal a recurring pattern. When a certain person enters a group, the atmosphere undergoes noticeable changes. Those around them exhibit wariness, aloofness, constraint, and sometimes even hostility. A legitimate question arises about the reasons for such a reaction, given that the person does not utter insults or seek dominance but behaves naturally. However, therein lies the root of the problem. When a person's aura radiates authenticity, awareness, and depth, it becomes a challenge for those around them, affecting aspects of their personalities that they have chosen to conceal. Carl Jung asserted that every individual possesses a shadow, a hidden side of the personality containing traits that have been suppressed or rejected. Most people avoid confronting this shadow throughout their lives. But when a person with an integrated aura appears in their field of vision, the shadow is activated. Their presence tacitly declares, "I have come to know myself. Have you?" For those who have not taken this path, such awareness can be painful. This is a confrontation between the ego and the process of individuation. A central element of Jung's psychological theory is the path of individuation, becoming a whole person through the integration of both light and dark aspects. However, many people never embark on this path. The reason lies in the fierce resistance of the ego, which represents a constructed image of I. The ego does not seek truth. Its goal is control. It craves the belief that one is good, normal, and does not need to change. Anyone who questions this is perceived as a threat. It is this kind of troublemaker that a person with an integrated aura is. They pose a threat not because of aggressiveness, but rather because they have reached a certain level of development. Their aura reflects a process of self-knowledge, reevaluation, and transformation. This energy exposes those who still cling to illusions. Instead of admitting, "I want to grow too," many prefer to declare, "You are too much." Why does extraordinary energy cause concern in society? Our modern society tends to encourage uniformity and superficiality in behavior. The ability to be noticeable, pleasant in communication, and follow the latest fashion trends are qualities that create a sense of comfort in those around us. However, when a personality appears radiating calmness, composure, and a deep understanding of life, it violates the unspoken rules of social interaction. People have difficulty determining the place of such a person in the usual system of coordinates. They seem not to participate in generally accepted games, not to seek approval from others. Their very presence implicitly asks the question, what else exists beyond the familiar? This generates internal conflict, discomfort arising from encountering truths that one preferred to ignore. And this discomfort quickly turns into dislike or condemnation. It is much easier to label someone as strange than to admit that they possess greater clarity of thought and live more consciously. Such a person becomes a kind of mirror, and mirrors, as we know, are not always welcome. Their spiritual depth reflects those around them back to themselves. For those who are open and receptive, this seems attractive. They are drawn to their wisdom, calmness, and confidence. But for those who experience internal disharmony, it may seem intrusive. They do not wish to be seen so clearly, do not want to feel their own confusion, insecurity, or denial. And so they retreat, attack, or reject. And the reason is not that this person is wrong, but that they are authentic. Individuality, like the radiance of an aura, is a priceless gift, but it is often associated with a sense of isolation. Recalling Carl Jung's words that the highest privilege in life is to reveal one's true essence, it is worth remembering that this path is by no means strewn with roses. It is a road that requires courage, an honest look at oneself, and often deep loneliness. A person's aura bears the imprint of their inner work, striving not simply to surpass others, but to become more whole. Wholeness is a rare quality, often misunderstood and even frightening to those who have not yet embarked on the path of self-knowledge. The paradox is that the further away those around them move, the closer one becomes to oneself. And the more harmony one finds within, the brighter the light that one carries into the world, even if that light blinds some. If a person has reached this point, it is important for them to hear. They are not broken. They are not too much. And they are certainly not the problem. On the contrary, they are unique. They feel what most prefer to ignore, see patterns that elude others, and ask questions that cause discomfort, not out of a desire to create conflict, but because their soul craves truth, for which one must pay. Carl Jung asserted that the path to wholeness, the process of individuation, is a journey that few are willing to undertake. It's lonely, confusing, and often leads to being misunderstood. But it's precisely what isolates one that testifies to their depth. Discomfort in superficial conversations, a desire to avoid toxic relationships, a feeling of being different. These are not flaws, but signs of development. As one's aura expands, the world around them shrinks. Most people are born with prescribed roles, told who to be, how to act, and what to feel. But some souls are destined for a different fate. They were never meant to fit in. It is predestined that one day a person will awaken to a new reality, but on this path, they are met with resistance, not only from social institutions, but also from their immediate surroundings. This does not happen out of malice, but because the internal transformation of the awakened serves as a reminder of the spiritual work that others prefer to avoid. They become an involuntary mirror, reflecting their own unresolved questions, and a source of light to which they are not yet ready to turn. Nevertheless, their radiance does not fade. Carl Jung once remarked that solitary days can be a sign of special attention from higher powers. Perhaps this is the meaning of the isolation being experienced, not as punishment, but as preparation for a deeper understanding of wisdom, gaining spiritual strength and clarity that remains inaccessible to most people throughout their lives. When one's aura begins to frighten others, it is often because it speaks a language that their souls understand, but their minds do not yet comprehend. Therefore, one should not restrain themselves, dim their light, or apologize for their sensitivity, insight, and inner fire. The purpose is not to be convenient for everyone, but to gain inner strength. And although such a person's presence may cause discomfort for some, those who are destined to be near will feel seen, protected, and empowered when they enter their lives. A person's aura is not just an energy shell, it's a powerful signal, a call to authenticity, and a manifestation of the potential that unfolds when an individual dares to live life to the fullest. The next time someone tries to dim your individuality by labeling you as too much, just smile in response. After all, it's not an excess, but a uniqueness that sets you apart from